Armin Briegel's been managing Macs and their users for nearly 30 years and probably held most technical job titles at one time or other. He's worked nearly 10 years both at Apple in Germany and in the US as a systems engineer and consulting engineer. Then he put theory into practice as a system administrator at University of Southern California. He currently works as a consultant for the Netherlands, writes on his weblog, scriptingosx.com. You should go check it out. It's great. I go there every Friday. And he's published 5 books for Apple administrators, 2 of which I have, and they're fantastic. So welcome, Armin. This, I guess, is Armin's favorite Mac product. You wanted to tell us a little bit about that one?
Yes, well, I was told I should have this prepared. So when you asked that question, what my favorite Mac product was, it's kind of like choosing your favorite child, I guess. But this was the first laptop that I was able to use productively as a full-time desktop replacement. I don't think I've had a primary desktop since this PowerBook. And so this was the Lombard. So I think it was the 98 or 99 PowerBook G3. That was the one that I got. And it served me well for several years.
Awesome. And did you want to do Q&A after the session?
Yes, we'll do it afterwards.
Okay, wonderful. I'll turn it over to you if you want to take me off spotlight.
Thank you. So I just have to convince my computer to listen to my clicker. This is wonderful. My presentation today is about an online presentation on presenting online. When Anthony told me the topic for this conference was things we learned in the pandemic, I'm like, well, there's certainly a ton of stuff I've learned in the last 18 months, but the technical stuff I probably would have learned anyway. The thing that I had to deal with as somebody who presents fairly frequently is, how do I present online? And I thought I'd put those thoughts together and the things I've learned on that. And I don't believe like my experiences here are the end all be all on this. Every time I participate in one of these online conferences, I'm hugely impressed by what other presenters do and how they deal with the challenges of presenting online. So this is my perspective on what I figured works for me. So why? Well, of course, 2020, the corona pandemic hit the world, and we all found ourselves suddenly working from home. And suddenly confronted with these wonderful tools. And I say that both cynically and in admiration, because they have enabled so much in the last 18 months. But of course, we all love to hate them as well, to present and share and do our meetings. Now, you might say, this is 2021. The vaccines are rolling out, depending on where you are, faster or slower. But the vaccines are rolling out. Soon we will be able to travel again, possibly worldwide. Won't we be able to meet again? Is this just a temporary thing? And if not in 2021, then hopefully in 2022. To that I say, I believe that remote is here to stay. Probably not as absolutely 100% remote as we have experienced in the last year. But many people, many companies realize that work from home and remote work is a valid solution, a valid thing that we can do. It requires less travel, less commute. Companies can have smaller offices because people work from home all the time. And for the things like conferences, it simplifies international participation, like me sitting here in the Netherlands, in the sunshine actually, and participating in a conference in Calgary. I would have loved to be there in person, of course, but the logistics of traveling may or may not have made that possible. So I think, in my experience, there are 3 different kinds of presentation. The first one is live, on stage, in front of a room. The second one is remote, over a tool like Zoom, Teams, WebEx, all the others. And the last one is actually just creating a pre-recorded presentation. And I'll talk about all 3 of those. And they're probably also not as separate as it may seem. And of course, the presentations will be prepared differently and held differently depending on how big your audience is. It's different if you have a small room with just a handful of teammates. or maybe a few people who are your customer, versus a medium-sized room, which is a local admin conference, or a big conference with potentially hundreds in the audience. You will present differently and prepare differently. When I start working on a presentation, I do it in a text file, in notes. Are you getting the sound? Something simple, just a plain text outline of what you want to talk about. Some topics and some subtopics, maybe note the demos and other things you want to have in there at that time. Take these bullet points and turn them into text slides. Again, just a title and some text for each slide. Or maybe just a note, this movie goes here, or this demo goes here. At this point, I already start practicing. Here, in my living room, this is where I start talking through the slides as if I were presenting to figure out how the workflow works, how the timing works. Do I need to add more slides? Do I need to cut stuff down? While you're doing this, you will notice I can replace this slide with images, or an animation would really support what I'm talking about here. Or maybe I want to put a movie here. Do this iteratively, over and over again. And every time you do it, the slides get a bit better, the presentation gets a bit better, and you're automatically starting to memorize. Keynote has a great way to rehearse. Keynote has a great way to rehearse presentations, and it's actually called Rehearse the slideshow. You can find this in the play menu, Rehearse slideshow. I use this so often, I actually go to the toolbar and add it to the toolbar. I use it all the time. And I recommend you do that too. When you select that, it will actually send you to the presenter mode of Keynote. So usually that's the mode that you see when you're presenting on the second screen. On the first screen, you will see the big slides. And you can work through this. You will see the presenter mode even if you're on a single screen like a laptop. And you can work through this and work through your presentation. You probably want to show the elapsed time instead of the current time of day. I think that is more useful. And if you find something while rehearsing in a slide that you don't like, you just hit the escape key and it will bring you right to that slide to edit, and then it should just work.
Just going to jump in, Armin. If you want to stop sharing and reshare with the audio, we've got time.
I will do that because I have more videos later. Hang on.
Okay.
Thank you. I actually have, did that change anything?
I haven't heard any audio on this one.
Yeah, no, there isn't any audio on this, but I think I enabled it without needing to jump out.
Wonderful.
Learn your presentation tool and the remote management tool. It's actually on a slide later. And I practiced this, but in the nervousness before I started, I forgot. There's two philosophies when you do demos. You just saw I did a pre-recorded demo in this one, which when you're doing remote, I think is way easier. There are, of course, advantages to recorded demos that you probably won't have failures because you record as often as you need. So the demo just works. And it will also be more seamless with the rest of the presentation as you're clicking through the slides. The downside of doing a recorded demo is that they feel less authentic. You will seem and appear and probably be more confident about what you're demoing when you do it live. Like Joel Rennick here in Mac sysadmin 2017, where he actually built a tool to get a Kerberos ticket live on stage in Xcode, which was an extremely impressive demo. So these will work better, but you have to practice them. You have to be confident. I think especially if you're trying to sell something to somebody, the live demo is way more convincing. And by selling somebody, I don't necessarily mean a sales pitch, but sales pitches can be internal as well if you want to convince somebody that a certain tool or a certain workflow needs to be done. When you're presenting on stage, I always love and hate the projectors. Projectors have to light up a large screen, and in the auditorium, the lighting may have to remain on for various reasons, and you have to work with the projectors. Low contrast is what you have to deal with. And watch this presentation running here, where I present also on Mac sysadmin, and watch how the dark slides and the slides with a light background work better. Dark colors are always different. You want dark text on a light background, in other words, light mode. And when you highlight something with colors, you want to use a few high contrast colors. Of the Spanish in 1574. This is a very dark picture. I'm sorry, but it was a very dark time. So that's 400. So that's 444 years ago. Talk about holding a grudge. So when you're presenting on stage, you have to deal with projectors and large screens. Use high contrast colors. Black text on white background always works. White text on black background kind of works, but is already hard. And even so, the audience might be far away from the screen. So you have to use big text, obviously, and big animations. The advantage is you're right there with your computer. You have the clicker in your hand. The audio and what you're doing is timed perfectly because everything is right there. So you can use animations to support what you're saying. The tool you use, of course, is Keynote. It might be PowerPoint, but well, we all know Keynote is better. When you're presenting remotely, there are a few differences. The first one is you won't get feedback. You will get no heckling, which is the good news, but you will also hear no laughs, which do support and help you when you do your presentation. You might be able to watch the chat, but I find it really hard to watch two windows at once while I'm presenting. So don't even try if that starts to distract you. You really have to learn to present to your screen at home, maybe your pet, if you have one. The good thing is, while we were rehearsing in our living room, that's exactly what we did. So it's just an extension of that, really. One advantage of presenting remotely is that the screen through which the audience sees your presentation are so much better than a projector can be. This is a slide that I took, or I made, for Jamf Nation User Conference last year, which was online. This was the template they gave us. These colors were in the template they gave us. These colors, I think, would never have worked on stage with a projector, but they actually work fairly well, and I kind of got to appreciate them in a remote presentation. I do want to point out, because it still annoys me several months later, that all this chrome around them. So, of course, Jamf has no problem or couldn't do anything about the YouTube chrome around the video that I'm watching, but then they put this frame around the actual slide deck, and then in the slide template that we worked with, there was another frame. So the effective space for the content that changes is about a quarter of the actual video. It still annoys me. I had to point it out. Aside from the colors, we can use subtler colors. We can highlight more things. You can also put more detail into the slides than I would be comfortable with on stage. So this slide, again, an example from my presentation at JNUC last year, has more information than I would be comfortable with on stage. And I think it works because people are watching this on high dev laptop screens, great contrast, and they will put themselves, if they're interested, at the right distance to the screen so they can read it. They can also pause, which is another thing you have to keep in mind. When you're presenting remotely, there will be latency. That means that the audio is prioritized over the video. That means if things happen the same time on my screen, they might be delayed at the viewer's end. So when you're timing your presentation with your animations, which is a good trick if you can do it on stage, that probably won't work as well when you're doing it remotely. Just keep that in mind. The frame rate over remote presentations can also be fairly poor. So if you use animations, make them slower so they can work. So we have eye contact screens, we can use them. The viewer will be sitting at the ideal distance to their screen. Use that. But keep in mind, if you're doing a live presentation, you will have poor latency and frame rate. You will be using Keynote and Teams and Zoom, and familiarize yourself with them and practice often enough that even when you're nervous before the big presentation, you remember to check that share the audio button. There's one great trick that they added to Keynote just in the last year, probably as a reaction to the situation that we were all in, which is play in window. So you can also go in here and under the play menu, it's play in window, or you can add it to your toolbar. It's not there by default. And when you do that, you will actually get not full screen your presentation, but 2 windows. And the second window is your presenter preview. And the first window is the presentation. And you can just share that window through the remote viewing tool, which is what I'm doing right now, actually. You can configure the presentation view. There's a slide picker if you need to jump between slides quickly. And you can also configure if you see the current or the next slide. And since you're seeing the current slide in the big window, I think you can turn that off. But you can configure that in any way you want. So play in window, they added that fairly recently in Keynote, and I think it's a great addition. For your home setup, well, you probably want a Mac. Most of us will be using a MacBook with the built-in camera. The built-in cameras are okay. People complain that they're only 720p, but if you're transferring over some remote tool, yeah, you can see the difference, but it's not that horrible. What you want to do is you want to raise the Mac so that the camera is on eye level. So you want some kind of raiser. You can use books. You want to power in. The new MacBooks based on the M1 chip have amazing battery life, but Murphy's Law will make sure that they drain during your presentation. So power up while you're presenting. You need a good microphone. The built-in microphones are getting better and better, but you want a good microphone. I have a blue Snowball that I bought a while ago, so it doesn't have to be a terribly expensive one. But here around, you will probably have some friends who are in the AV and what they recommend right now. You want to watch your lighting. You don't want to have the window behind you. You want to have front lighting. Doesn't have to be a fancy light. A desk light will do. Turn it on. This is kind of like the minimum. Everything from here is getting better and better. If you have an iPad with Sidecar can be an amazing second screen or third screen if you already have a second screen. If you can handle that information while you're presenting, iPad with Sidecar is a good thing. And I recommend using a clicker. I have the Logitech Spotlight, which I love, because if you touch your laptop or even your mouse while you're clicking, you will hear the sound over the microphone, and you might just move the camera a bit. Do a technical rehearsal. Install the remote software. Approve all of the privacy settings for your remote software. That is really because you won't get the screen recording request until you actually attempt to share your screen. So do that. It has happened to me. I know these things because they have happened to me. Test audio in and out. Remember to check that one checkbox. And if you're using multiple screens, arrange your things and see how that works for you. The last option is pre-recorded. So we have the first two options. When we do pre-recorded, we kind of get the best of both worlds. We will present, the movie will run on a high contrast screen with the viewer at the ideal distance, ideal resolution. Even if the bandwidth is poor, the movie will download and they can all watch it at once. And we can use editing and effects and all of the things that the editing movie tools have for us in addition to Keynote. The downside is, yeah, it's going to be a bit more work. You suddenly have all of these tools at your disposal and you have to use them, or you don't have to use them, but when you use them, you have to learn how to deal with them. QuickTime Player, for example, for recording demos or for recording video as well as the slides. iMovie to put everything together, or if you have it and know how to use it, Final Cut Pro. You will probably want to start using pictures and movies taken on your iPhone, which is a great tool to enhance what you're doing. Then you have to deal with the Photos app. So maybe you use voice memos to record audio. And in the end, you'll have to transcode all of that into something useful. So a tool like FFmpeg or Handbrake. Keynote has a great way built in to record a presentation. So there's no toolbar for this, but I can click on Record Slideshow under the Play menu. This looks like my presenter mode, but I have the recording bar at the bottom. When you hit the recording button, it will give you a countdown, and then you will be in presenter mode. It will record what you speak over the microphone and your mouse clicks to move through the presentation. It will record all of those together so it can later recreate the presentation. So right now, in my demo, I am recording what I'm doing, and it is remembering what I'm saying and how I'm clicking. When you're done, you just hit the record button again to stop, and you can kind of see it in the overview at the bottom. And the contrast is really poor, even if it's not transmitting over Zoom. There are bars there that show where I clicked for the animations. You can scroll back and replay what you just did, and you can even go back in time and re-record over a certain segment. As soon as I start re-recording over a certain point, it will warn me because everything after that will be discarded. So you have to do everything after that point again. But now I'm just re-recording from that particular point. When you click the record button, that's one thing that I always fall into. Remember to move the mouse pointer away, because otherwise your mouse clicks will just start and stop the recording. It's one thing. When you're done recording, what you recorded will be stored within the Keynote. And you can just play the recorded slideshow, and we'll automatically play the audio and progress through the slideshow. So you could be starting this and standing next to your computer, and the presentation runs fully automatically. Remember that, though, that the recording is stored in the Keynote when you share the Keynote. It makes the file much bigger, and you might not want everybody to see that. When you edit the slides after you've made a recording, you will get this dialog that says, you're changing the slides. This might put the recording out of sync with your slides. Are you sure you want to do this? It offers you to create a duplicate. I usually choose edit and then discard the recording afterwards because they're out of sync. The big thing here is that you can export the movie that you just recorded. It will show your slides as the video, and your audio will play everything, and you will get the animations. And you can get that as an MP4 video, which you can upload then to pretty much any video sharing system. If you've done that, you probably say, well, I want to record 2 streams or 2 videos at once. One with me through the camera, and the other one with the slides, and then I want to switch back and forth between them or do picture-in-picture. And you can do that, and you actually can do that out of the box with just QuickTime Player and Keynote. You can also use iPhone and Keynote. The principle is the same. Set up your iPhone on a tripod, record yourself recording, and Keynote will record the presentation. There are third-party tools, and I want to highlight ScreenFlow because it's really good at doing this, especially if you have demos in between as well, not just slides. So to do this, and I did it here in the demo, I started up QuickTime Player, and I chose New Movie Recording. This will record from the built-in camera, or you can attach an external camera. Hi, it's me in the video. And then I switch to Keynote and also start a slideshow recording in Keynote. So at this point, I am recording my slideshow, and QuickTime is running in the background, also recording the camera of myself presenting the slideshow. You have to be aware of this. As you work through the slideshow, you do your recording, you do your mouse clicks, you progress. When you start it, you want to either clap your hands or snap your fingers to create an audio peak in both of the audio tracks of the videos you're recording at the same time. We will use that later to synchronize both of the movies to have the timing lined up. Otherwise, your mouth will move while the audio doesn't line up. So I'm working my way through the presentation here. I'm done. I ended the recording and I'm going out. And in Keynote, I immediately choose to export as movie. I want the highest resolution. We can always downsize that later. And I'm saving this as demo slides. And then I go into QuickTime, which is still recording in the background of my camera, and save that as demo camera. Now I have two video screens recording me from different perspectives, one the slides and one me doing the thing. And then in iMovie, I can put those together. So I import the two videos I just created. And then I drag the slides first, because the slides will be your primary video. And see down here, there's the audio spike I got from snapping my fingers. And when I drag in the face camera, the audio spike is much farther because I started the recording much earlier. So I trim that, move it to the side, and then I zoom in so I can align the audio peaks. And that means now that the sound and the video is aligned on both tracks. Very simple. I got audio on both tracks, of course. I can mute one of them. In this case, I'm muting the QuickTime track. And from then on, I can have both streams and I can move between the slides. Right now, if you look in the preview in iMovie, I'm only seeing my face. iMovie has several multi-track effects. In this case, I'm using Pictureinpicture, and then I get the primary video in the background and the face, the secondary video, wherever I want. I can move it around. And now I have created Pictureinpicture. And you can use all of the other iMovie features like editing out bloopers or pauses that are awkward. You can only show the face for a short time and then go back to the slides. You can do all of these things in iMovie now that you have those two streams aligned. So as I said earlier, this is what I've been doing and how I think I have been enhancing my slide decks and my presentations remotely. But I think it also pays off to see what others are doing, and I'm hugely impressed by that. Tim Perfit of Two Canoes Software, he was a presenter yesterday. I couldn't watch it because of the time difference, but I'm so looking forward to that video. He has a YouTube channel, and he's been showing progress on his products, mostly Mac Deploy Stick, on that YouTube channel with, you know, medium short videos, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how long it takes. I like it. He always sits there with his lab coat, which is quirky and fun, but they're informative, a great way to show off your products. Ed Marczak at Mac Sysadmin, which usually takes place in Gothenburg. Last year, Mac Sysadmin was virtual, and they went for fully pre-recorded sessions, pretty much like Apple does at WWDC. And Ed Marczak took the idea of, we are inviting everybody into a living room for these kinds of remote presentations, very literally, and did an excellent presentation, filmed mostly, not entirely, in his living room. And there's also a document attached to that with resources, and in that document is a hidden link to a blooper reel, which I just can highly recommend. But the presentation itself is just wonderfully done, very brilliant. Of course, the big companies have been doing their presentations and keynotes and events online as well. Apple keynotes, obviously, commercially produced, very professional. Of course, they have very different resources than we would, but I still like watching them and think like, yeah, this seems well. How can I use this in my presentations? And apparently Tim Cook likes to walk around when he talks. So they always have Apple Park in the background, but others have copied this. Dean Hager at the Damned Nation user conference last year started his keynote by walking through Minneapolis, which of course had reference to what he was talking about. So it made sense. I liked it. Walking around. Maybe you can do something like that. You may not have Apple Park as your backdrop, but depending on where you live, you may have other options, like this tulip field. You can go outside where there's beautiful scenery, with canals and bridges. You can choose a medieval city as your backdrop. or maybe a castle. There are other people as well, and they do this for a living all the time. They bring out videos weekly or even daily, and they earn their money with it. And of course, those are YouTubers and streamers, and maybe our generation is a bit too old to be fully into that. My son, who is a teenager, laughs at me right now. I can hear him in the background. But they are producing very informative, very great videos, and they're all basically 10 to 15-minute presentations. And I think we can learn from something like these on how to make engaging, fun presentations available over the internet. It's just an idea. The people I'm pointing out here is Renny Ritchie, who has a great YouTube channel, as well as MKBHD. Renny Ritchie is very Mac-centric. MKBHD is tech-centric in general. iJustine has been doing this for years, also very Mac-centric. And Joanna Stern is not on YouTube, but she produces videos on the Wall Street Journal, which I also very, very worth watching. So to come to an end, I don't think these three are very separate. I have mixed pre-recorded sections with mixed success, I guess. Today, I've tried that. I've wanted to try that for a long time. And I think I might be doing that as well, even if I return on stage for conferences. In some ways, I have already done pre-recorded demos for years on stage. So going a step further to fully pre-recorded videos, not that big of a step, not that big of a difference. And even in remote presentations, you can use pre-recorded sessions or the other way around. Doing keynote presentations and pre-recording them is basically the same as a live session, whether you're remote or on stage. I have put together a document. The links will also be somewhere on the website, I guess, but scriptingos10.com/macdeploy21. There's a bunch of links to resources, how-tos, tutorials, and all the videos and stuff that I showed. I will also link the video once it's online, and the slides and the PDF of the slides are there. Though the PDF of the slides would probably not help you very much because half of the deck was videos. But you can actually download the keynote presentation. My name is Armin Briegel. I am scripting OS 10 and all the social media, Twitter, Slack, and my website is scriptingos10.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Armin. That's wonderful. Armin's site, just plugging that, is fantastic. If you're an Apple admin, there is so much content there that can help you with just about whatever you can think of. So that was really great. Yeah, like I wish I would have had that before I started emceeing or started planning for emceeing, because it's just a great procedural way to kind of get through it all. Do we have any Slack questions? It's looking fairly quiet right now. I think we're all just stunned. That was fantastic. Anything else?
Well, I will be hanging out in the definitely the Slack, and I'll try the Kumo thing later as well. So if you have any questions or can think of them later, then I'm welcome. And as I said, scripting OS 10 in Slack, time difference, keep that in mind. But in your early morning hours, you can probably find me there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Armin.